We took the long way round to the Navy base. I assumed Rio could work some magic to get me in. Okay, technically, I could get myself in. Even though I was no longer in active service, the hunters were government operatives after all. I still retained my rank too, while I was a hunter. It was a neat fact most people didn't know. All hunters held a rank equivalent across different military branches, and they could pull that rank, within reason. It helped speed up investigations, and occasionally we were tasked with assisting military police. Given I already had the rank, I was allowed to retain it, despite it being higher than what a hunter usually held. So yes, I could just walk in. But having been on the other side of that coin, as a soldier, watching outsiders just swagger onto our base and onto deck, ordering people around like they owned the place, I knew exactly how it would go down. Rio would ask nicely if I could assist, she would give all sorts of legitimate reasons, and by the time she was done, they would be happy to see me. "Is there anyone on base that you still know?" Reva asked while I negotiated traffic. I took a moment to consider. Possible. No one I was really close to, though. They're all gone. She left it there. She knew that story well enough. "What about me? Will I be allowed to—" She made a vague gesture with her hand. "Follow me in?" She sneered. "Assist your investigation." I raised an eyebrow and side-eyed her. "Sure, but you'll have to leave the arsenal in the car. Sorry." She tucked the handgun and blades under the seat. "They won't have a problem with my augments?" "Firstly, you don't have any ballistic threats built in. Secondly, they'll have an anti-violence field in effect. You know, like the one your buddy shut down back on the train when we met." "Oh, that thing." It wouldn't actually make a difference to Reva. It would suppress her Hermes, sure, mine too, but she had already used both burns today and it was redundant. Rhea finally called back and gave me the all clear. We pulled up to the gate. Tall, reinforced, electrified, and fully surveilled in every possible spectrum. Top of the range tech. If the stranger had been the one to bust into this place, they may as well have just left the door open and put out a drink for him. A camera pivoted to my face. I could hear the scanner kick in. I held back the impulse to flip them off. The gates gave a low hum and then a clank as the Magna lock released and it slowly slid open. Atop the palisade wall, sentry guns pivoted to track us as we drove in. We were directed to the visitor parking. I wasn't really listening, I knew the way. I pulled up to an empty parking space, taking a deep breath. "Would you look at that? We get a welcoming party." I looked up to where Reva indicated. A squad of 6, led by an officer, all in basic, if not old, kit. Retro guns, no smart weapons. I carefully opened the door, stepping out, keeping my hands where they could see them. "Lieutenant," I nodded to the officer. "Ulf Whitlock?" He questioned me in the coldest of tones. "Commander Whitlock." I corrected him, for what little it meant. He made a gesture and all 6 soldiers raised their carbines. "You're under arrest." Reva leant forward sheepishly. "You know what? I think I'll wait in the car." We were led, if not politely, then at least professionally, at gunpoint to an interview room. I was cuffed to the desk, mostly for the look of it. They didn't have any non-Magna lock cuffs. I let them hold me to avoid the fuss. Reva was seated to one side, unrestrained. "They must have really missed you," she said sarcastically. "I'm sure their aim will improve eventually." She grunted, not appreciating my excellent sense of humour. There was a dampener on the room. Well, not so much the room, but this whole wing of the building. I couldn't contact the outside world. I couldn't call for help. Their mistake. I didn't need to contact anything outside the building. "Any idea what this is about?" I shrugged. Could just be one of the old crew trying to make my life hard for fun. I grimaced. Or not. "I thought you said everyone you knew was gone." "No one I was close to. But there's bound to be a few higher-ups and a handful of squads I crossed paths with. I don't think I pissed anyone off before I left." She raised an eyebrow. "I find that hard to believe." I frowned at the desk. "Well, I don't think so." "So we can safely nail it down to, you have no clue." "Pretty much." We sat in companionable silence for a while after that, until the door eventually opened. A gnome entered, unescorted. He was in his mid-40s or so, though his hair was already fading to white. He sported a short beard, and the stripes on his shoulder made me grin as he pulled up a chair across from me. As far as tech was concerned, he was very basic. The necessary cranial augments and subdermal armor, and that was about it. Grey? He looked up at me from a datapad he was flicking through.
Whitlock, it's good to see you.
He let me have a smile with the comment.
And it's Captain Toussaint now.
He tapped his shoulder. I shook my head. I couldn't have gotten luckier. Yeah, I see that. Last time I saw you, you were a sub-lieutenant? He sighed.
Well, I got a few lucky breaks. Maybe you heard about the incident in Spain.
I couldn't hide my shock. That was you? He didn't reply, he just smiled and shrugged. Damn it, Grey. I'm so glad to see you. I was worried I was in the shit for a moment. He gave me a pained look and sucked air in through his teeth.
Hold that thought, mate.
I got a sinking feeling instantly, and he spun the datapad round to face me. Ah, shit. Reva got to her feet and moved to have a look over my shoulder. Grey didn't stop her. The image on the screen was me. Well, it was supposed to be me. The figure wasn't attempting to hide their face. Shit, they weren't even trying to be furtive at all. If anything, they made sure the camera caught their good side. I deactivated the cuffs, they fell to the table. Grey didn't flinch. He had known how pointless they were. I reached out and picked up the pad, scrolling through multiple images. When was this?
A few nights ago.
Reva shook her head in disbelief. That can't be him. In case the weight of the conviction in her voice wasn't enough, I elaborated. A few nights ago, I was knee-deep in swamp water with witches breathing down my neck in the Reaper's garden.
We know, your handler informed us, but evidence remains, well, clear.
Clearly doctored, Reva shot back. I reached out with a thought, urging her to stay calm. It's impossible, and you know it. Grey sighed.
Hang on,
Reva said more calmly this time.
If you've had these images for 3 or 4 days? Why haven't you come after him yet?
I looked up at the gnome questioningly. He wrinkled his brow and took back the pad.
We only just decoded the encryption on them an hour ago.
Aren't these from your security cameras? I asked incredulously.
The feed on those cameras was corrupted from 0800 hours for 120 minutes exactly. The system was rigged to go off after the goods were taken, almost like we were being taunted. And after all said, you're one of the few who could actually do something like that without physically jacking into a single port. That's not to mention the 4 personnel that seem to have been hypnotized or something. They helped load the goods and recall nothing. We found them unconscious.
I slashed back in my seat, and Reva sat back down. You and I both know I wouldn't leave clues like this. I wouldn't show my face and scramble the cameras. I'd just fucking cover up. And I wouldn't puppet more than one person at a time. I need to keep contact, you know that. Grey was nodding along as I talked. He was well acquainted with my abilities and their limits.
I know.
This is a setup, Captain. The man who did this is the same one from the bombing footage. You've probably seen it. The one with the helmet stripped clean, the terrorist suspect. He leant forward.
Go on.
I recounted my history with the stranger, my suspicions about the validity of his death, and the current situation with the investigation the police had on it.
This is all news to me.
I shrugged this time. Nothing to do with you up to now. Besides, if we were in a country where government departments all communicated and were productive, we'd be living in Finland. He sat drumming his fingers on the tabletop, thinking. Why didn't you put out the word on this heist? I asked, interrupting his contemplation.
Until we cleaned up the footage, we had nothing to go on.
That wasn't the truth. I couldn't read his emotions like I could read Reva's, but Grey had always been a terrible liar. It did make kind of sense, though. There was no need running around clueless.
We assumed they'd show up on the black market eventually.
I nodded. That would have been my first assumption too, to be honest. I wouldn't have been sitting around waiting for it to happen, though. But then I'm a tad more proactive. I threw up my hands. So what now? We send out for coffee and reminisce about the good old days while I wait for witnesses to come up from the garden? When those goods were being lifted, I was half dead in a witch's coven. I don't know what else to tell you. This would be funny if it wasn't so insulting. The gnome was actually starting to look annoyed. Not at me, but at the situation.
I'm willing to take your word on it. However, there is a procedure. Also, the top brass, well, they want a head to roll across their desk.
He lowered his voice.
As far as they're concerned, you wouldn't be the first vet to turn terrorist.
I wanted to be pissed, but he was right. Hell, some of the most grueling missions I'd been on were counter-terrorism against deserters and vets turned mercs or worse. The longer I sit here, the longer this arsehole has to prep his next step. Gray stopped tapping the table and narrowed his gaze at me.
What is his next step?
What? I was taken aback.
Well, if you're right, and this is the same guy who did the bombings, why hasn't he released a statement or demands?
I opened my mouth to reply, and then stopped. I don't know. I've been so focused on getting a lead on him, I hadn't stopped to ask myself, what were his motivations? I ran through our interactions in my head. The only time he'd ever alluded to a larger plan had been just before he tried to blow me through a wall. He had said he had big plans. He wanted to send a message, but that message was either lost in transmission, or there was more to come. As soon as those bombs went off, you suspected they were your explosives, right? You would have had demolition guys picking through the footage, inspecting the sites. The gnome nodded. So, ask them if the damage matches the quantities stolen. Gray looked worried for the first time. If my guess is right, there's going to be another threat or demand or something soon, then more carnage. That's a sobering thought. No shit. Gray, you need to get me out of here. I need to catch this asshole. Captain Toussaint had left us in the interview room to consult with whoever was putting weight on him from above and chase up on my hunch. Reva had remained pretty chill through the whole discussion, letting me do my thing. Despite how majorly screwed we were if this went wrong, on her part, she just kept me calm by being there. Regardless of whatever was going on between us, it felt good to have a partner, a team member I knew I could rely on. It had been too long since I'd been in the field with someone I could trust. I knew that if I charged into that hall right now, she'd be right at my back.
We need a name,
she said, picking up on my thoughts. What?
You know, you, me, your sister, we're a team, right? We need a name.
I turned to look at her. Why?
Publicity.
I prefer animosity. I turned back to look at the door.
We could get matching jackets.
Her deadpan delivery would have had me fooled if I wasn't linked to her emotions. She sat waiting for a rise. Let's not, and say we did. Thank the gods the door opened before Reva could start putting forward suggestions. Gray re-entered, as did a male kitsune. He too held the rank of captain, his white hair and ears in stark contrast to the deep blue uniform. 6 white tails swayed behind him as he walked. I'd only ever seen one other kitsune, recently, Lady Vixen. This guy was intimidating in the same way she was seductive. Mechanical arms similar to Reva's and extensive cranial upgrades, all military grade, I was very familiar with.
With luck, this is Captain Kumo. He's overseeing the possibility of the stolen goods being deployed at the bomb sites.
Gray paused on the word possibility. You mean you guys are actually thinking this might be a coincidence? I scoffed. Officially, yes. It's barely 24 hours. Kumo said in a smooth, masculine tone. I was in a team that changed the political orientation of an entire country in less than 24 hours, I said coldly. You're not trying hard enough. Kumo shifted uncomfortably, a curling of his lip, irritation. I'm well aware of your credentials, Commander. He said the last word like it was a slur. Such a shame you're a civilian now. I smiled. A thought had just occurred to me. Depends on what you're classifying as shaming. The snarl became more pronounced. You're hoping to save face, aren't you? Neither one of them replied. At least Gray had the decency to look me in the eye. Kumo looked down to a sheaf of papers and shook it to level them off. No one outside this base knows what happened, do they? This was an internal investigation, until the disaster. I barked a laugh. No, this was already a disaster, for you. One of the most fortified bases on the west coast, and someone walks in and walks out with fuck knows how many high explosives, and you got no leads, except for me, with doctored footage, the weakest link of all. It's all I need. I could slap some cuffs on you right now and call it a day. I have enough evidence. What's my motive? For all I know, you struck a deal with these terrorists and sold them your services. I'm sure you could use the money. I ground my teeth. Thin ice, mate. Ulf. Gray tried to interject, ever the peacekeeper. I rolled over him. Look, I'm flattered, don't get me wrong. But I'm not the one you want. The evidence is all over the news. You want a scapegoat? Look elsewhere. Like this elusive, masked terrorist of yours? It's a more solid lead than those doctored photos. Do you want real justice or quick results? Kumo sighed. What I want has nothing to do with it. I don't approve of hunters. I think using your kind is degrading. You're glorified murderers with a long leash. However, what I need is the people who did this in cuffs or in the ground. I'm told that that is your particular specialty. You have a suspect and a theory. I'm willing to give you 48 hours to get me results. How very Hollywood of you. Reva perked up from her back seat. I'm sure that quick wit will serve you well, Miss Harlock. Or should I say, Bloodhorn? He looked down at the sheaf of papers, flicking to some at the back. You do have an interesting file. Reva's anxiety spiked at the mention of that name. I made a mental note to circle back to it at a more appropriate time. That's not my name anymore. There was the classic Reva anger taking over again. I mentally urged her to chill the fuck out. This wasn't why we were here. I couldn't have her losing her shit over this. Very impressive dirt digging. Shit, if I had half of what you have at my disposal, I would have had this cleared up 2 days ago. Fortunately, you're not authorized for that kind of clearance anymore. You have 2 days to get me the results I want, or I take the little evidence I have and throw you to the wolves. Do you understand? Are you blackmailing me? Dirty tactics shouldn't be strange to someone like you. You're a fucking moron. I beg your pardon? He sounded genuinely offended. He probably didn't get thrown home truths very often. You heard me. You're a fucking moron. If you'd peeked out of your own rectum long enough to read the request my handler phoned through, you'd know I'm already on the trail of this mark. In fact, you're the second person in as many days to ask me to hunt them down. That's not many, but it's strange that's happened twice in 2 days. Lastly, I don't respond well to threats, as Captain Toussaint might tell you. You might want to apologize. I could feel the tension in the air, and I was the only one who knew how this was going to go down. The fox let a primal growl escape his lips. I'll see you behind bars before I apologize to a waste of skin and circuits like you. You're a disgrace to the service. Venom in those words. I knew his type. The service was everything. No wonder he had a chip on his shoulder. He couldn't wrap his head around the idea that someone would want to leave, to have a life outside. This has been fun, I said as I got to my feet, but if you're not going to help, I'm done here. Kumo stood, anger flared in his eyes and his 6 tails bristled. Sit back down, I haven't given you leave. There was a sudden lull in the silence. It took a moment for everyone to realize what it was. The vent had stopped pumping cool air. Kumo looked up and around. The red light that should have been blinking happily on the security camera was dead. He made eye contact with me. I winked at him and the lights went out. Red emergency lighting flickering to life, bathing us in blood-red illumination. The door slid open and everyone turned to see the open portal to bright white light outside our little crimson box. Kumo snarled as he spun back to me, eyes filled with rage. I held up a finger, forestalling him. Gray should know better. So should you, if you know anything about me at all. You think you can just walk in here and take over? He spat, reaching for his sidearm. I tilted my head, eyes following his grasping hand. His mechanical arm froze in place. Yeah, I do actually. I leant across the desk, my face was so close I could smell his breath. My voice low, my tone cold as ice. This was a big fucking gamble, but after the week I'd had, I wasn't going to be his little bitch. I spent 2 decades in and out of this base. You haven't even bothered to change your systems. I didn't just master those in my time here. Fuck, I helped redesign half the programming. Ulf, chill out. Gray kept his tone calm, to his credit. This isn't a good idea. I ignored him. Word to the wise, don't let a Cypher into your compound and leave him for over an hour to slowly gain access to your entire network. I was inside your walls before you even stepped through the door. I might have limits, unlike the asshole in that footage, but with enough time and a good distraction, I'll take your part, Foxboy. Security! He was starting to panic. I wouldn't bother, I've locked everyone out of the hallway until the end of the block. You're just implicating yourself further. Maybe it is your head I want. Sit! I barked it at him. A surge of power akin to that I'd summoned down in the garden flowed from me to him. It invaded his mind and his legs buckled under him. He collapsed into the chair. I hadn't even meant to do it. It was an impulse. I didn't even know how I'd done it. We are going to waltz on out of here. I'm going to have any evidence you have sent over to my sister, who's 10 times better at sifting than anyone you employ. Then you're going to wait patiently until I call for backup. Is that clear? Why the hell should I give you any help now? You traitor! You coward! That struck a nerve. I barely restrained myself from burning him from the inside out. It was what he wanted. He wanted me to react. So far I hadn't done anything so bad that it couldn't be smoothed over with time. He wanted me to assault him. I might have been a coward, but I'm no traitor. I sold my soul for this country. I loomed over him with barely controlled rage flowing through my veins. And you know how I was repaid? With death. With people like you pretending it never happened. I was a weapon to you, a tool, discarded when I was broken and of no further use. Commander Whitlock. My eyes snapped to grey, his voice still calm. If you take this any further, I can't help you. I narrowed my eyes. You're not the only one around here who owes me their life, mate. But he was right. Now was the time to back off. I'd made my point. I could see it in Kumo's eyes. He wasn't going to let what had happened leave this room. I may as well have stripped into his skin and marched him through the compound. I gave Reva a mental nudge and she stepped to my side. I straightened my posture, looking down at the emasculated officer. You'll never be welcome back in this base. It was a weak threat, and he knew it. Who said I want to come back? It wasn't until we were a good 5 kilometers from the base that the adrenaline wore off and I began to shake as my body caught up with how stupid I'd been back there. I was exhausted. Between the fight at the warehouse and what I'd just pulled off, I was burning through my stamina and energy. Luckily, I had known what was going to happen and Reva was driving. What the fuck was that about? Reva finally let rip. Thanks for standing by me back there. I repeat, what the actual fuck? I couldn't let him dictate to me. I can't let them think they're in charge. Not anymore. Never again. She calmed down somewhat. I get it. I do. But wasn't there some other way we could have gone about things less risky? A guy like that only understands one thing. I had to speak to him in his language. You think there'll be any backlash? She asked, genuinely worried. I shook my head and looked out the window. He'll want to keep his pride. He'll want to hold his head high. He won't want word of this getting out. Hell, he'll probably tell his superiors it was his idea. It sounded like something that asshat would do. Oh, the blackout? The lockdown? I was just testing him, wanted to see him in action. Give me half the chance in 10 minutes alone with him, I'd show him what I could really do. You okay? I nodded. My forehead pressed up against the cold glass as I watched the city race by. We weaved our way back to the apartment through traffic. I needed a break. I needed lunch. I needed to refuel. My comm started to ring. It was fear. Why did I get the feeling I wasn't going back to the apartment anytime soon? I answered, relaxing back into my seat, looking at the grey of the roof as the image of Fear's vid feed took over my vision. If you're not calling to tell me some good news, I don't want to know. Fear hunched forward, legs crossed, seated on the floor, baggy clothes, headphones. She was back in her element. You look like shit. Fuck you very much. She smiled and did something with the computer. There was the sound of errors popping up. Want to tell me why I just got sent an encoded file from the Frio base? Fuckers didn't even tell me how to open it. But you can open it, right? She scoffed. Duh, I'm insulted you have to ask. It's a little gift from Gray and a few friends. Our terrorists lifted the explosives from the base. It's all there, on the hush-hush though. She nodded as she began to type and click away at reinvigorated speed.
No secrets like military secrets. Is this priority?
Yeah, it's the only lead we've got.
So you won't be interested in the ping I got off a transmitter tower in the CBD then?
I froze.
It's a long shot, but I'm pretty sure it's him, so he'd been working on this energy signature recognition software.
I'd only half been paying attention. Now I was fully focused. I cut her off mid-sentence. Fia, just tell me where. Thank you for listening to Cyphers Edge. Subscribe so as not to miss future episodes. New episodes uploaded every second Saturday. Script and narration by JJ Brandis. Music was provided by Cale McLeish. Copyright JJ Brandis 2025.